I'm going to be called transphobic for saying this, but I do not care. Biological men should not be able to breastfeed babies. I can't even believe I have to say that, but let's talk about it.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.
Guys, before we get into today's video, shout out to everybody who has signed up as a patron on my Patreon. Every piece of content and every bit of message that I put on this channel, you are fueling, and I cannot thank you enough. And today's is going to be a very interesting video because I cannot believe that this even needs to be said, but apparently we are now in the time and place that biological men are breastfeeding babies. And not only are we in that time and place, but we have trusted medical institutions saying that the milk from a trans woman is just the same as the milk from a biological woman. I'm going to read you this headline from The Telegraph so that you can experience this with me. It reads, "Trans women's milk as good as breast milk, says NHS Trust." Now, for those of you who don't know what the NHS is, it is the National Health Service in England. It's essentially their publicly funded healthcare. Now, according to several sources, this information came from a leaked letter of a medical director at the University Hospitals Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. Now, in this letter, the milk that would come from a biological man is referred to as human milk, and it is said to be an ideal food for infants. No, I am not kidding. And this letter apparently came about as a response to some campaign group that was complaining about gender policies. Now, I guess if we're being logical, we all knew this day was coming. If you're allowing biological men to identify as women, they're going to start to identify as mothers as well. And what do mothers do? They breastfeed. But I gotta be honest with you, not even in my wildest dreams as a leftist did I believe that we were going to move forward with biological men being able to breastfeed babies. Now, of course, that was naivety and ignorance on my part because look at where we are today. I recently came across these two photos of a woman feeding her newborn baby with a bottle. You can clearly see that she is distressed and crying whilst doing this. And you'll ask yourself, why? Now, in this post, she details that the reason she's bottle feeding her baby and why she is so distressed and upset is because she fell for trans ideology and ended up receiving a double mastectomy, chopping off both of her breasts. Because of this ideology and her own decisions, she is now a biological mother and a biological woman who cannot breastfeed her child. Now, at the same time as this sort of gut-wrenching story is being shared on the internet, we have biological men who are taking a cocktail of medications in order to lactate and feed children from their own breasts. If that is not a major example of us living in the upside down right now, I don't know what is. And while I am very passionate about this subject matter and my feelings on the issue are not making me feel calm, I'm going to try to calmly dismantle what we are seeing right now, which is literal pictures on the internet of biological men having babies latch onto their nipples in order to breastfeed them. I'm going to be straightforward in telling everybody who watches this video what this is. This is an experiment. We are using babies as guinea pigs to allow people to fulfill a fantasy that they have of being a woman. And apparently that fantasy involves breastfeeding babies. Now, I want you to ask yourself, if a biological man decides that their dream is to become a woman and to breastfeed a child, what do you think the true motivation behind that really is? Do you truly think that that man was born with a female brain and is now just fulfilling what is totally natural and normal to do? Or do you think that there is something else going on? And whose needs are left out of the equation here? Whatever baby we are subjecting to this experiment. We are essentially saying that somebody's vision of what the world should be matters more than what the world actually is. And we see this time and time again with woke ideology and leftism in particular. People want the world to bend and shape itself to whatever they believe that it should be, whatever their identity is, their reality is, their truth is, as you so often hear. Now, in my opinion, that is not the way the world works, and we cannot allow babies and children to be victimized in the wake of this ideology. This is of no benefit to a baby or infant, and quite frankly, it's not natural. And we know that it's not natural due to the cocktail of drugs that need to be consumed in order to make this happen. Now ask yourself, if the baby is not benefiting from this experimentation, who is and how? And even if you believed what maybe my old leftist self would have believed, that these men are trapped in their bodies, that they truly are female and they need to find a way to live a female life, do you think that their feelings are more important than the health and life of an infant? I will leave that with you to think about. The reality is that a biological man is not a woman and probably should not take on the biological features of a woman, and that includes includes breastfeeding children. And if we're reading in between the lines here, and we are now allowing men to receive medical treatment that allows them to breastfeed, let's follow this to its logical conclusion. Would you be in support of men getting, I don't know, a uterine transplant and falling pregnant with a child? Would you be okay with that experimentation on an infant that could go in either direction, leading to a lot of harm? If you find yourself thinking, no, that's gone way too far, let's revisit the breastfeeding and see if we can't come to the same conclusion there. And we don't really have to do much searching to disprove the claim that the milk from a biological man is just as good as the milk from a biological mom. And forgive me, but we're going to get into the weeds a little bit here. In a baby's first days, a mother is producing something called colostrum from her breasts, also known as liquid gold. This colostrum is packed with things like antibodies, vitamins, nutrients, the list goes on and on. Men have never been known to produce colostrum. On top of that, a mother's breast milk is made specific to her baby. There's tons of evidence that proves that a mother's body takes in information from her child and responds to that information. From kissing her child, from the kid's saliva, a mother can tell what that child's immune system needs, and guess what? Her breast milk responds by giving what that baby needs through the breast. Do you think a man's body is going to be able to do that for a child? A mother's milk also goes on to be tailored for that child through different stages of development and growth, giving it what it needs in proteins and fats and specific consistencies. There is nothing like the biological connection between that of a mother and her baby. And if you need further evidence, let's talk about the process that trans women go through in order to be able to breastfeed. This treatment to bring about lactation involves a drug cocktail, and one of the drugs in this cocktail is known as domperidone. Domperidone is not widely used in the USA, and the reason behind that is that it has been known to create heart issues. It is used very seldomly for mothers who are reporting problems in breastfeeding. It is not meant to be used if either party has heart issues, or if your baby starts to have behavioral issues upon taking the drug. It also should be mentioned that trans women, in order to transition, are on a slew of other drugs so that their body can mimic that of a woman's. I think we'd be delusional not to think that the laundry list of other drugs that trans women are on are not going to affect the baby as it's being breastfed. There are a ton of other tidbits and facts I could throw in here to reinforce the claim that a mother's milk is unmatched, and that a trans woman, aka a biological man, certainly cannot produce something that is as ideal for children. But I will leave that to you and your own research. The reality is this is experimental, and this is an experiment being performed on the most vulnerable members of our society, babies. It is not based in fact, logic, reason, science. I don't know what else to tell you. And at the end of the day, your views towards yourself and your identity, whatever they may be, however you identify, those do not supersede the health and well-being of a child. The world we live in and the reality around us does not bend and shape itself for what we think it should be. It simply is. And we must learn to live within it, to accept it, to find our place within it, instead of trying to have it bend to our whims in order to accommodate some feelings that we have. And to see a supposedly trusted medical institution put out information like this is mind-blowing, but I can't say that I'm all that surprised. Think about what the logical conclusion of this ideology is and how much further people are going to be willing to go for the sake of that ideology. I'm going to call it now that there's probably going to be much more talk of biological men being able to give birth, and that there are probably many medical professionals who are working on making that a reality as we speak. So where is the line going to be, and when are we going to draw it? I drew mine quite some time ago, and if that leaves me with the accusation of being a transphobe, I guess I'll have to sit with that accusation. If being a transphobe means that you care about children, you care about reality, and you care about the negative impact of this ideology and dogma, then I guess that's what I am. But guys, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know how you feel about this subject matter. As I said, it is a pretty mind-blowing one to be talking about today. As always, if you disagree with me, duke it out in the comments, but do so respectfully. And if you like this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time I post for you guys, and maybe share this to somebody who may or may not believe in this ideology. At the very least, they'll be updated on what's going on in the world and maybe have some facts to be able to combat some of these claims. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.